Now, like I said, we've managed to relocate on the Nkuhumas, and the pride seems to be all spread out. And of course, well, Mr. Mfumo, with his beautiful big shaggy mane, has joined the party. Oh, hello, boy. Now, this is Amber Eyes, and you can see he's showing a lot of interest in her. Will she reciprocate? Only time will tell. But I think we're going to stick with them for a little bit, and we'll come back to the rest of the pride. Let's see, I'm just hoping that they don't disappear around a bush, otherwise that won't be fun. Don't go behind the bushes. And we shall have a chat about his face. Right, I need to make a move very quickly. Gotta get there before if they do mate, before they do. No, VM, are you holding on? Watch your branch. He's hiding behind. He just disappeared too quickly for us to keep up. Amber Eyes was not hanging around to wait for us to see the entire show. Next time we'll be quicker, but I think we'll have a better chance now because it's now very, very much open. And they can't do any dashing behind trees like they just did. And this is so interesting. But look at that, isn't that amazing? Both look very satisfied. Big yawns, big bellies. Life is good for the Nkuhumas again. But it's a problem with lions is that it's an up and down life all the time. Some days are better than others. Coming into summer can be a little bit difficult with the fact that all the animals, not the items, the animals that they prey upon start to disperse because there's so much food around. But they're back in action again. And I just think that's so incredible with everything that's gone on. And I'm still learning about Amber Eyes, but just how she keeps, whether she's coming into estrus properly, I'm uncertain. But she doesn't seem to be taking to any of the males, and she's been seen mating with them on numerous occasions. So this is, of course, very, very interesting. Now remember, this is a live safari, so if you have any questions for us, or if perhaps you've just stumbled across us and you're just joining in for the first time, welcome. So myself, James and Brent, we'd love to have chats with you and answer any of the questions that you do have for us, and you can do so by tweeting us your messages and adding the hashtag Safari Live at the end, or alternatively you can send us an email, questions@WildEarthTV. But now let's have a look at his face. Now for those of you who missed the meiosis, sort of scene that we had with Mfumo, there is a video that's on the Safari Live Facebook page that you can go and watch just to sort of do a bit of a catch-up, because it's sort of quite in depth as to what happened. But the short version of it is basically he got an injury on his face. Either a botfly or a screwworm fly laid its larvae inside his little wound. It then caused an abscess as the larvae were developing, and it burst open, and there were lots of maggots feeding on the live flesh. Eventually they would have fallen out and pupated and then turned into flies. And this happened a while ago, and it's healed incredibly. We thought it was going to leave an even worse scar. Yes, boy, we're talking about you. That's nice that he lifted his head up for us. And I said this about a couple of weeks ago. I said because it was such a bad wound, is that when that scab formed, it was probably and very easily going to be removed. Whether he was marking his territory and rubbing his cheek up against a tree, he would very easily pull that scab off, or like what's happened now, and this is what I think has happened, is that he's shown quite a bit of interest in Amber Eyes and he's mating with her. And we know that sometimes it can be a little bit aggressive, and I think that she's given him a swipe across the face, whether it was her or one of the other lionesses at the buffalo carcass, and that scab has then been removed. But it'll be fine. The flies are bothering him a bit today. Let's just hope that he doesn't get another bouts of the meiosis. And then he's also got another little injury above his right eye, but that's not too serious. That was probably also from a paw to the face. But he's a tough boy. He has now proven himself worthy of the Nkuhuma Lionesses. You've been through a couple of battles, haven't you, my friend? Hello, Rob from Liverpool. Now, speaking of that buffalo that I just mentioned, Rob was wondering if the single lioness had joined up with the rest of the pride, or if the rest of the pride had joined her and feasted on her kill. She has indeed. So Amber Eyes is here now with Mfumo, and I believe that the rest of them and the cubs are actually just behind us. So we'll probably take a swing around there in a moment. There are just a few vehicles in the sighting, and they are all spread out, so it's quite nice that we sort of just take turns. And I think that this would be the perfect opportunity now to actually do a little switcheroo, seen as though he's decided to lay down. And I suspect that it won't be the last time that we see them mating. So if you are worrying, don't stress too much, because it seems as though they have just started mating today. So we know that this is going to happen frequently for the next 24 hours or so, and then it's going to start to slow down. Right, now we're going to have to do a big loop, and we'll try and head around to where the carcass is and find a nice spot. But apparently James is on a roll today with all the little things. James obviously has a green thumb that he's able to pull the plants out of the ground and then plant them again with lots and lots of love. Isn't that just wonderful? I'll have to get some gardening tips from him, when we get back. But here is the rest of the pride. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 little Nkuhuma cubs, and there are 2 lionesses here. And then I saw Amber Eyes and 1 other lioness. So it seems as though we're missing 1, but I also don't know where the buffalo carcass is. I'm still quite trying to figure out where that is. So it's possible that one of the other lionesses is just lying off next to where the carcass is. So we'll do a bit of exploring in a moment. But very full and, well, annoyed by all the biting flies at the moment. They're all swatting their tails, rolling around, very unhappy with life. Not the little cubs, though, except them. I think that they're in such a comatose sleep now, nothing's bothering them. Now, earlier we were looking at Mr. Mfumo's face, and we were discussing about myiasis. And now, Shannon, you were actually asking if it is common for animals to be sort of infected by botflies. Now, something like myiasis, you get different types of myiasis. Some of the most common ones really affect sort of domestic animals, so cows and pigs, where their eggs are then swallowed and pass through the digestive system. It can cause a illness, it can cause vomiting, but just for a couple of days, and then they seem to overcome it and move on. The most common types of botflies that sort of, I don't even know what the right word is, what's wrong with my English today anyways, are the types of botflies that lay their eggs on the legs or the skin of the animal. So they don't physically feed on their host, they just sort of use them as an incubator, I think is the best way to describe it. Now, wildebeest, as well as an antelope called blesbok, sort of look like a mountain goat and don't have a very intelligent look on their face either. Well, you'll often see the wildebeest and the blesbok bobbing their heads quite a bit. And that's because they lay their eggs on their legs. Those animals then wipe their noses or scratch their faces on their legs, and those eggs are then transferred into the nasal passage. And because it's so moist and so warm, it's the perfect hatching environment for the larvae. So the larvae then hatch and they wriggle their way out, causing a bit of irritation, but they then just get snorted out and fall back onto the grass, and the entire life cycle starts again. So that's the most common one. The myiasis that we saw, however, with it either being, there's only a couple of botflies that will actually, that will lay their eggs inside a wound or a cavity, and then their larvae will feed on the live flesh. And it's the same thing with the screw worms. The screw worm flies are probably the more common one. So we're not sure which one it is. It could have been either. Now, that type of myiasis is a little bit less sort of common. So it was quite interesting to watch the whole process develop on Mfumo. There's not many cases where the animals have sort of just been left alone to let nature take place. Often the vets will get involved and sort of try and treat it, remove the maggots. But Mfumo was fine. Like I said, he's a tough lion. They are so strong, and he's proved himself now. VM, you see this lioness that's lying with her back towards us? Can you see those little lines on her back? It looks like it's just extra fold, or looks like the skin is bunched up slightly. But that reminds me of the boring beetles, don't you see? When we normally see the big pushed over knob thorns or marula trees, those patterns that are normally carved out of the wood. I saw that and automatically I thought of boring beetles. It might even be veins. I'm not sure. Yeah, maybe it's even veins running through her body. Or it could just be the skin pushed up. One of the two. Maybe veins. We'll go with veins. Let's do that. That sounds probably like the most logical thing. But it's so peaceful out here. There's not even a bird chirping. The only thing, well, it's peaceful for us. It's not too peaceful for these poor lions, like I said. And it looks as though they're quite full. And I hope that they do get up and, well, do something for us. But we're going to go driving around now. I want to find where this buffalo carcass is. So that's going to take some interesting off-roading as we've got to duck underneath trees. But let's go back across to James. And apparently lunch wasn't enough because he's munching on something else now. We're currently getting the evil eye from Mr. Mfumo. But he's popped his head back up again, and perhaps he is going to jump onto his feet. And well, like I said, this mating is going to go on for quite some time, and it's going to be quite regular. So I suspect that we'll probably see it again. Now, if you're wondering about the buffalo, we did find it. However, the lions have dragged it into a drainage line, actually just directly behind our mating pair. It's very difficult to see, but it's somewhere in there. And it's almost impossible for us to get a view. And it's going to be impossible for those lions to actually feed on it in that ditch. So hopefully if we just be patient and we wait it out, one of them will go in and drag it out. Also, VM pointed out to me how blind I was being, and that there were 3 lionesses actually sitting in front of me. And I only managed to count 2. So don't be alarmed. All 5 lionesses are actually here in case I cause some panic. Now we've been seeing all the Birmingham boys mating with all the girls, and Niharita, you were actually wondering if this male lion will mate with all the females. There we go. Another lioness has got up. Now, hopefully she's going to do what I just said. Maybe for her on her own, she should be alright to maybe munch on the buffalo. But I think if there's more than one, it will be difficult. Let's go around. I think we might get a gap if we just go park on the other edge of that drainage. It's a lot easier that it's just us here now. So sorry, Niharita. Now, yes, he will indeed. There's actually 4 Birmingham male lions. So the coalition is made up of 4 of them, and they sort of all take turns. However, Mr. Mfumo, as well as Tinyo, one of the other males, they seem to be and hang around the Birminghams, the Nkuhumas the most. So they tend to do most of the mating with the girls. But when they come into estrus, it's a very interesting story with Amber. She's never had cubs before. Okay, now, bless you, lioness. Now we need to poke our nose in this little gap here. And I think, if we look back on the other side of the termite mound, there might be a gap. Oh, just watch this prickly branch here. Now, sadly, the lioness that was tugging away at the buffalo, it was very, very difficult to get a view of her, but she has moved off of it now. I think she was even struggling, trying to get it out over there. And like I said, it was in a very, very difficult position. Now, they would have tugged that into that drainage line to hope to keep it out of view from the vultures. That would then bring, well, quite a few other predators. It would cause a bit of interest. And I think that they could have regretted that decision, because it's going to take some serious tugging to pull it out. Now Amber Eyes has just sat up again, twitching those ears, and of course Mr. Mfumo, who just mimics her movement. We'll just have to pay the patience game. But something that I have noticed, look at the muscle in Amber Eyes' shoulder. Isn't that just incredible? Just how she's sitting there. And this is what is so amazing about these animals. Is like James was just talking about how we have no real defense other than our brain against animals. Oh, big yawn. Is that these lions can go, you know, a week and a half, 2 without food, but they're still so muscled up, and they don't lose, they lose condition, but they gain it so quickly. There you go, big stretch from Amber Eyes. Mr. Mfumo trying to entice her. She's actually doesn't look like she's resisting this time. I'm just sitting quietly, just so we can watch what happens. Oh, normally they can be quite vocal when they do mate afterwards. Sometimes they let off a roar, or there's a lot of growling, because unfortunately it can be quite painful for the female, as the male, as I'm sure most of you know, has got barbs on his penis which help induce copulation. And that, of course, you can imagine is not very pleasant for the lioness. But she seems to be quite content at the moment. And that's the first time I've seen Amber Eyes, or sort of in one sighting, not sort of put up a fight and resist mating with the males. That was quite interesting. She was quite happily sort of to take to Mr. Mfumo. Now, I know it sounds silly, but Mr. Mfumo really does put in the hard work when it comes to the lionesses. Now, we saw all those little cubs, and we know, unfortunately, 2 didn't make it due to the white muscle disease. Now, Laslin, you were wondering, don't normally lions in a pride have their cubs at the same time? They can. However, it's not always a given. Like, for instance, in this circumstance, we've got a young lioness who's probably come into estrus, and she has also been seen mating with the various males, but when she'll have cubs, we're uncertain. And well, Amber Eyes has been mating with these males for quite some time now, over the last couple of years, and she still hasn't had cubs just yet. And you must also remember, is if any of the lioness's cubs get killed, she'll just come back into estrus again. So it doesn't necessarily have to sync up, it doesn't have to be spot on. It can sort of be staggered out. But as I was saying, we often see Mfumo, he goes away for a couple of weeks or a couple of days, and then he comes back again, and the females are sort of quite aggressive towards him, and he sits away for a day or 2, keeping his distance, and then eventually they warm up to him again. And remember, we watched that incredible sighting near the Wahlberg's Eagle's Nest where he sat in the distance, and then eventually he got up and approached every single lioness. He didn't miss one of them, rubbed heads with them, gave them a lick, and I just thought that was so amazing. Normally the males come charging in and expect the lionesses to sort of come up and greet them, but he does put in the effort, and it's interesting behavior. But then he's got 2 sides to him, though. He's got this affectionate side that he occasionally shows, but he can be a stern big male lion when he wants to be, and you've got to be careful when you do approach him in a sighting like this with the lioness that he is mating with, because he can be quite protective, and sometimes he may let out a growl. So it's always good just to take a wider berth. You'll see he lifts his head up and he gives you sort of the evil eye. That's when you know, okay, not any closer than that, keep your distance. Now, we obviously mentioned that Amber Eyes has been mating for quite some time, but it hasn't resulted in any cubs. And Gail, you were wondering if there was any research done in sterile lions. I'm sure there is. I just need to whip out and have a look at a paper or 2. but perhaps James and Brent will probably be able to shed some more light. I've never ever seen a sterile lion before. Every lion that I've ever encountered has had cubs at some point in their life or had cubs at the time. So this is all very sort of new to me, and it's very interesting. So sort of every time I see amber eyes mating, I sort of make a note of it and just write a little bit of information down, sort of what we observe, because this is a whole new learning curve for me too. And now it's one thing reading something in a book or reading a paper about it. It's a completely different thing eventually experiencing it from yourself. And you can learn a lot from reading and listening to other people, but you really do learn the most by actually watching everything unfold. So that's what I'm doing, just sort of making notes at the moment and trying to make sense of it. So I shall do a bit of research on sterile lionesses and see what they say, because it's quite interesting. I mean, I would have thought if she was sterile, especially if new males were to come in, like what happened with the Birminghams, and she hasn't had cubs once, you would have thought that they may have got a little bit on the upset side, really. And at one point she was resisting mating with them, and there was obviously a lot of aggression between the Birminghams and Amber Eyes, but now she seems to be a little bit more receptive. So we don't know, we just have to sort of sit and watch and wait. And I hope that all of you watching the show do things like that, is that it is wonderful seeing all these amazing things. And I don't think a lot of you realize how incredibly lucky we are to watch these live documents, really, on all these animals, learning about meiosis, learning about white muscle disease, which was a new thing to a lot of us, learning about sterile lions, whether it is that or maybe she's got another issue, whatever it may be. And it's so important to watch these things happening live, like I said, instead of somebody just telling you about their experiences. So to be able to sit and enjoy it for yourselves, it's an absolute treat. Remember, I've been in the bush, and it hasn't been for very long, nowhere near the amount of times that James and Brent have spent in the bush. So these experiences are fantastic for me. I absolutely love it, learning about the different things, and that's what makes this job so interesting. You cannot get bored of it. Now we're going to go and have one last look across the other side at the other cubs, at the cubs, and see if they're getting up to anything. However, if they're still fast asleep, I think we'll probably carry on and go and have a look for something else, and then perhaps we'll come back here in an hour and maybe an hour and a half, and hopefully, well, the rest of the pride would have woken up and maybe pulled that buffalo out of the drainage. But I'm going to send you back across to Brent, who's apparently standing in the middle of a road. Two of the little cubs have now woken up and wandered away from the rest of the pride and decided that they're going to play with a jackalberry tree now, a very young jackalberry tree, but it's made a very bendy branch, which is of course the perfect toy for these little lions. And I don't know when it was last, well, when I last saw them playing. I feel as though every time I see the Nkuhumas, they're either walking around now, they're either eating a buffalo or sleeping. But I miss the days of those little cubs climbing the marula trees and falling off and doing all those wonderful things. They are becoming adults way too quickly. And it is just so incredible how they grow up so fast. Now these two look all right. They don't look like they're suffering too much from the mange, obviously the sort of patchy elbows that they all seem to have. But I'm very sad because I had a look at young floppy ear, well, the floppy-eared girl, and she's not looking very well. She is covered, and I'm so worried about her because it's now spread all over her body. And we'll try and get a look at her. It's just a very difficult spot to have a look at her. But her tail has almost lost all of its hair. Her tummy is completely black now with just skin, and it makes me so sad. But this is one of those things, and I have to remind myself on a daily basis, so don't worry, it's not just you. And this is natural selection. And you also must remember that the survival rate of lion cubs, unfortunately, is not the best. Now, River, who is 9 years old, you were wondering if lion cubs are bigger or smaller than leopard cubs. Lion cubs generally get much bigger. I suppose, and even when they're born, a lion cub will be a little bit bigger than a leopard cub. But they both grow equally as quick in proportion to of course, their adult size. And it's the same thing, even tigers. Tiger cubs will be bigger than lion cubs and leopard cubs, and well, so forth. But you can see that little cub at the back is very itchy. And well, hopefully, like we've all been saying, is that with this rain that we've had now, hopefully the immunities of these cats are going to start to boost and flourish, and hopefully that will be enough to sort of get rid of the nasty bouts of mange that they seem to have contracted. But they've been fighting it for a couple of months, so maybe they'll be fine. But for now, they're just two little happy cats sitting underneath a tree, biting on the branches, pulling it down, and having the best afternoon ever. I keep forgetting what the date is, but it's only the 30th of December. It's actually my dad's birthday today. Happy birthday, Dad. Just thought I'd slip that in. He's probably not watching because he has to work. Look at those little teeth that are coming through now. And it's incredible. I mean, we saw those little milk teeth that they used to have. Now it looks like the adult teeth are in and starting to grow nice and big. And they're very white compared to the adult's teeth. They sort of have a slightly more yellow tinge to them now as they've gotten older. Oh, and this little cub looks like it's going to go down, maybe towards the buffalo. But first, let's sharpen those nails and strengthen those tendons. Oh, that must feel so nice. That must be the equivalent of a big stretch. What? Quick toilet break. A little girl, and I'm sure after this, hopefully she's going to go down towards the kill. Now, hello, Super John is awesome. And you were wondering if... Oh, no, not before being tackled by her sibling. Sorry, Super John is awesome. So you were saying, do lion cubs get more diseases and illnesses, more so than the adults? And that's correct. They do indeed. And that's just because they are so young, like a human baby. They haven't built up the immunities yet to all the germs and the bacteria that are around. Some diseases are inevitable, something like rabies. There's not really much they can do if they come into contact with a rabid animal. They will contract it, and unfortunately, they will die from it. Same thing as white muscle disease. There's a chance that they can survive. So the white muscle disease was a deficiency caused because of the lack of nutrients in the grasses that the buffalo were feeding on. And then, of course, they couldn't develop properly. And the proteins and the vitamins that the lions get from feasting on buffalo, unfortunately, well, it just caused a big problem with them. Oh, now watch this little cub. Is now going over to the mating pair. And this could be a bit dangerous. Normally, Mfumo doesn't mind, but... let's see, maybe he's in the mood for games, I'm not sure. But the little cub is very wary. She's on her toes. Just in case he does give a swipe towards her, she'll be quick enough to try and move out of the way. And they're not as clumsy as they used to be either. They've sort of resembling lightning fast sort of reactions now. Before, they weren't very good and everything was sort of staggered and almost like it was in slow motion, really. What are you playing on? Looks like they're playing on a little termite mound. And they don't seem to play as rough anymore. So I said, it's amazing. Haven't seen them jumping on each other or tackling each other in such a long time. We got so lucky at one point. That's all we used to see. This one's coming back. But you can still see that they're little because the smallest thing catches their eye and they stop to have a look or bite it and swat at it. Come on, little lions. Oh, no. Full of beans. I'm so happy that all of you are very optimistic about my favorite little girl. So thank you for those lovely messages and being positive and saying that she is a fighter. She is indeed a fighter, and I'm hoping I'm sending all the positive vibes that I can send her way. They are there. I really hope she pulls through from this, and I reckon if she can overcome this mange as far as it's gotten, we'll try and go and have a look at her. I think she's going to be unstoppable. She is going to have some of the toughest genes out there, because she has, honestly, these lion cubs have been through a lot. They're really proving themselves worthy. And that's all it is. Good genetics passed on from the adult lionesses, and they're only going to get stronger and stronger. Hey, little ones, you're very curious. Oh, back into stalking position. Oh, no. Now they're just sort of death staring each other. There we go. They want to, dropping the head. Ears sometimes going back. Hello, little one. Did you just bite your tongue? Looked like that little girl. She tried to pull her tongue and she got stuck on one of her teeth. That's no good. Okay, we're going to see. I think we're going to get another surprise attack here, because the younger cub on the left. There we go. We're going to have one more surprise attack. Go, go, go! Woo! And another tackle. It seems as though the cub on the left is doing a sterling job and showing itself worthy of being hopefully a very good hunter one day. But now, James has got a little creature that crawls around and has got lots and lots of little legs. Let's go take a look.